What's going on, guys? We are going to go through some stuff today. We've decided to make our educational video today about bracing your back for deadlifting. This is something that I see as a mistake that's repeated over and over again in a lot of our Form Check Fridays. So hopefully we can address a large number of you guys with this one video and hopefully help a lot of you deadlift better, keep your back in better health, and move more weight safely and effectively. Okay, so the two biggest components that we're gonna talk about are going to be one, using your lats properly for bracing, and two, maintaining a proper lordotic curve in your low back. So the lats are a hugely underrated muscle in terms of their role in stability and in bracing the spine. Now, a lot of people think that the lats only function is to extend the shoulder. Now, that is one of their functions in terms of movement, but the lats actually come down and insert on this big sheath of tendon that connects into your pelvis and your low back, called your lumbopelvic aponeurosis. And because your lats are so much bigger than your spinal erectors, they play a huge role in stabilizing your spine properly, especially under heavy load. So we're gonna talk about how to use those, what it feels like to lock those in, some of the common cues that I use, and some of the ways you can tell to see if your lats aren't working. The other thing I see a lot of is improper positioning in the pelvis. I had one of my clients tag me in one of his friend's videos last night, and as he set up for his sumo deadlift, his back went from flat to his hips were tucked right underneath him, and he's wondering why he keeps missing deadlifts at the lockout. That's something we're gonna address today, because we need the kinesthetic awareness, or we need the ability to know what it feels like to put your hips into position to extend your low back, because your posterior chain is not gonna do its job unless it's in the right position. So we're gonna move on over and talk about that, show you guys some examples of this stuff right now. So the first thing we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk about the lats and how to activate them in your deadlift. Now, I set up from the top down, from the bottom up. Yeah, I set up from the bottom up. So you see a lot of guys, like if you watch Christoph Wierzbicki, he sets up here, comes down, grabs and pulls. I don't do that. I find it easier for myself and a lot of the people that I coach to set up once the hands are on the bar, to use the lats to pull themselves in. So often what I'll coach people to do when they set up their deadlift is to think about squeezing their armpits shut. Now, we don't want the bar, we don't want the shoulders to come back. We just want to lock them down. I talked about this in our how-to deadlift video, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more in depth right now. So when we set up, what we want is, you can see my shoulders are out in front of the bar right now. When we pull in, we want to engage the lats, pull the shoulders down, so the chest and the upper back are extended. So the chest's out, the upper back is extended. Now the lats are gonna help pull you into position and make sure that the pull of the bar is gonna be down this way as opposed to out this way. You can see when I don't set my lats, my upper back is in a crappy position. I'm probably gonna end up doing a little bit of this and then coming through and having to smush my back through at the top of the lockout. That's not ideal. So again, we're gonna grab the bar, shoulders out in front of the bar. As you sit your butt down, we're gonna pull the lats tight and extend the low back. That's the other thing I wanna talk about, extending the low back. You'll see a number of sumo deadlifters go to set up, and they set up like this, because there's a common cue saying get your hips close to the bar. People will take this and exaggerate it, and they'll end up doing this. Now that hurts my back even just to do that. Probably an indication it's not a good position. Now, if you read a lot of the studies, you look at a lot of the literature, flexion, or the curving this way of your spine, is necessary for the injury mechanic known as herniating your disc. That's a bad thing in case you weren't sure. So what we want to do is we want to maintain a slight amount of extension in the low back, because it's a safer position for your back. One way I coach people to understand this, or to get used to this, is using a cat-cow stretch. This is a common yoga move. You saw it in my mobility routine, but we're gonna go over here and I'm gonna demonstrate it real quick. Okay, so especially before I do deadlifts and squats, anything where I wanna maintain a little bit of extension in my low back, I'll use this exercise to prime myself, work through that range of motion, and more importantly for people who it maybe isn't natural for, is just sort of feel how it feels to put yourself in that position. So you're gonna come down, hands and knees under the hips, hands under the shoulders, and you're gonna extend your low back out behind you. So what I'll do is as I extend my low back, I'll actually pull the lats down a little bit and get extension as sort of a global extension through my whole back. And then into flexion and extension. So really just sort of practice what it feels like to put your low back into extension. Now for a conventional puller, it's gonna look a little bit different, but a lot of the same mechanics. We're gonna use the lats, pull the armpits shut, or pull the armpits closed, tight. Try and pull your shoulder down towards your butt and squeeze your lats. At the same time, we're gonna make sure our low back is flat, if not a little bit extended, because again, we don't want that flexion mechanic there because we're trying to prevent injury. So we're gonna come down into position. Now I'm not sure how much flexion I can get, or rather extension, sorry, I can get in my low back with conventional anymore. It's been a long time since I've done anything conventional. So lats on, extend the low back, up, and pull through. And that's the first conventional rep I've done in probably a year and a half. Real quick, there's also a distinction to be made between people who can get into this position and then lose it versus people who can't get into this position. So if you can't get into a position where your lats are engaged and your low back is extended even just slightly, I would work on the cat-cow drill. I would work on stretching and opening your hips. You could use some of the mobility movements that we have in our previous video. We'll put that link in the description below. And you can also, I would stretch your hamstrings a little bit. A lot of times there's a bit of a tug of war between some of the extenders of the low back and the hamstrings pulling back and forth. So stretch hamstrings, open the hips, all that kind of stuff. If you can't get into that position, if you can achieve that position, but you lose it every time you deadlift, there's a couple of things you need to work on. You need to work on patience. You might need to work with lighter weights and do some light paused rep deadlifts. We've talked about those before. You essentially are going to come up off the floor, pause about 1 inch to 2 inches off the floor, and then continue through the rest of the lift. A lot of times losing your back or losing your positioning is just an ego check. You might think that you're good for more weight than you are with good position, but there's really no point in cultivating strength in a crappy movement mechanic, because that's not going to get you anywhere in the long term. Hopefully this guy helps you guys put that all together and we see everybody deadlifting better. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next time.